Okay, we got a lot of material, so I'm going to get going, and I'm going to be moving pretty rapidly. But welcome to Survival for In-House Developers. My name's Michael O'Neill, and I'm going to be your presenter. A couple quick things. We have a microphone. If you have questions, anytime, just grab the microphone, and I'll adapt to you. We have it up here. We just have to turn it on. In addition, download the file that comes with the presentation. It has a links page that deals with every URL link that I'm going to reference, so you don't have to write it down. It has a starter file for resources and tips, and a developer log, has a help system with it. We have a white paper that really goes into detail. We have a PDF of this presentation with the presenter notes in that download. So a little bit about me. After high school, I entered the Air Force, and I was trained as a helicopter flight mechanic, flight engineer. And I started flying on rescue missions on rescue helicopters. One of the first things I learned was the 9th letter of the alphabet is not in the word team. And I also learned everybody in the unit got along good, and everybody outside the unit loved them. And it wasn't because we were a special operations rescue group, it was because the way we treated people, the respect we showed. It's all about behavior. After I was discharged, I entered the fire service. Early on in my career, I was working a cardiac arrest, and the gentleman did not survive. 2 weeks later, I'm called to the chief's office, and here is the wife of that gentleman. She came in to thank me for the way we treated her with respect, the way we tried to resuscitate her husband. Here's a lady that just had the worst 2 weeks of her life, and she came in to thank us. That made a lasting impression on me. It's all behavioral related. I continued on with the fire service, went up through the ranks to the division chief, where I was co-managed a 911 center for a couple of years at the fire department. There you have technologies, all sorts of technologies working together, and somehow it works. The companies that are still in business today had a couple things going for them: exceptional customer service and exceptional internal customer service, the way they treated each other. Now, there's a couple of the big ones that slipped by, and we'll be talking about them in a few minutes. Now, I want you to look at this picture. It's a memorial from the World Trade Center, and start thinking what this guy is thinking about. I did sort of an impromptu study, or asking people, what are the biggest things that in-house developers do? And I had one response: if it turns on, rings, dings, and has lights, I work on it. But as you imagine, most of the people, server maintenance to file maintenance and so forth, personnel issues, training and stuff like that. Now, I used a logging system when I was an in-house developer besides the fire department, and I took all the errors that I was having to fix, and it steered me towards a deficiency in my own solutions. I was terrible at the password module, and I was spending a lot of time. I had other developers to say they spend a lot of time with checkbox data, copy and paste, things that we shouldn't be doing. So use a logging system to tell you what areas of your solution may need help with. Okay? Now, a week after the World Trade Center, we had a threat analysis meeting at the fire department. And somebody made the comment, we would be the last place something would happen. A week later, the FBI and our hazmat team are shutting down a portion of a city because of an anthrax incident, the AMI building. It made worldwide news for quite some time. So it's not a matter of if, but when something's going to happen. Now, as an in-house developer, I was doing division chief of EMS plus my software duties. What happens if I have to spend my time on one discipline versus the other one? Who picks up the slack? Well, we worked and we came up with a disruption plan. That's just cross-training somebody to take over and help you out with the slack. It's just common sense. But we didn't have it. And that was one of the things that stressed me out when I was doing this. Now, anytime you see a link here, that is telling me, or that should tell you, that's a link that you can go to, and it's in that links file. You think this guy's looking for his off-site recovery? Data backup? Is disaster recovery or continuity plan? You need to be involved in the creation of that. Those are links that you can read a lot about it. What used to anger me a lot is when I have somebody that develops an emergency action plan, doesn't have a clue what I do. So be informed with this. How would you like to have been on the software team that wrote the Boeing software? Do you think they have enough attorneys and insurance to cover that? What type of testing do they do? This is one testing there, good manufacturing processes or practices. There's a pharmacist, David, that runs Infuse America, and his head of IT, Isaac, is here. And they're redoing their whole pharmacy for electronic prescriptions. And I'm going to tell you, the amount of stuff they have to go through, the DEA, the version manual, the FDA, and then all the API requirements, it's astonishing. And they're using an agile programming method. And they're probably going to be having somebody outside do the testing. So whatever you do, whatever the discipline, make sure you know what type of testing and certification you need. And you need to log what you're doing. Keep a journal. Because if something happens, that's going to be your protection. Now, what about just for a smaller business or whatever? In that file, the resource file that you can download, it has starter tips in there. And there's some legal resources. Harvard Law research. Then you have your user groups. You have the FileMaker community website, and you got people here. Those are three of the smartest groups of people I've ever met. And they've been there, done that, and they can tell you a lot of stuff about what type of attorney you need. Attorneys are a lot like doctors. You don't go to a proctologist if you have chest pain. You go to a cardiologist. Same thing with attorneys and insurance agents. You have to select the right ones. Now, the big thing that I encountered that was one major stressor is I had people in the organization I was doing, or that I worked for, sending suggestions to the fire chief, not thought out suggestions. So I was having to spend a lot of time saying, researching why we should not do this. You need a suggestion plan. Something that comes from the top down. If you want to make a suggestion, you put it in writing, in detail, how it's going to help the company, the customer, who's going to do it, how long, and how are you going to help. The frivolous suggestions, they don't have the energy to write it down. Then the non-practical suggestions that you may get, when they have to write it down, they may determine what the problem is and fix it. Then you have the ones ready to go. By all means, thank them and tell them what the status of their suggestion is. Early on in my career, and my first DevCon was in Monterey, I started hearing a couple of developers, and I thought their middle names were security and backup. And I'm talking about Stephen Blackwell and Wim DeCourt. They made a very big difference in me, and I followed their methods and listened to them. And I had 0 crashes on my software solutions that I employed at the fire department, 0. Now, the other thing, in the white paper, it goes into a little bit more detail about deploying the solution. You should deploy your solution on a server. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. If you can't afford it or don't have the hardware, check with your sales rep, check with the user groups. There may be some sort of status that you can get into that can help you. Now, how many of you know the full product line of FileMaker, or now Claris, or whatever we're going to call that? Who knows the full product line? Okay, I certainly don't. So what I'm saying is learn the full product line, finish your degree, you're in charge of your own marketing. Okay. Branch out. The more you put up here, the fatter your wallet's going to be with the green stuff. And don't forget about starting your retirement. CNBC News has a website that you can do this stuff with. You can read a lot about the financial retirement programs. As in-house developers, you're both providers of services and your customers. Okay. How many have had negative occurrences dealing with IT? Show me your hands. Okay, that's about half. How many have had positive occurrences I've had more positive, but why is it I remember the negative versus the positive? Could it be that I went through a help system that wasn't so helpful, that the developer failed to develop, or excessive wait times, and by the time you talk to somebody, you're getting an attitude, or maybe they have an attitude, and it just doesn't work that way. Or maybe they are not knowledgeable to help you with what your problem is. Or that you could be faced with somebody that has the almighty syndrome. And all that is your issue is not important enough for them to worry about. They don't care about it. So this leaves an impression. Now, there's another way of saying that, but if I'd have put that, Rosemary would have not liked it. Now, my first exposure to an IT person, we were getting 286 and 386 computers in the stations. And I was assigned to a rescue and just came back off a mental health call where we had somebody committed for a mental health evaluation. We walk into the station, we see this IT person working on a computer, acting squirrely. Now, the definition of that is his elevator didn't go to the top floor. And he starts acting strange and everything else. And I looked at my partner and we just sort of like laughed, saying, you notice the similarities between our last patient and this guy? You know, we've seen people committed with less issues than this guy had. But that was my first one. Never occurred again, but that was my first exposure. Then we had a gentleman, he'd come out to fix the computer and blame it on AOL, wipe the computer and reload it and leave. Well, what's the problem? He would always say, it's AOL. Well, why are you putting AOL back on there? Because it's AOL. We never knew what the problem is, so if you don't know what the problem is, how do you fix it? Matter of fact, he looked just like that guy, but a little bit more skin and a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. Then we had the hit and run group. If you come out to fix something, we were the group, we always wanted to know why something broke. Don't just go there, fix it, and not tell the person. You know, stop by, spend an extra minute or something dealing with somebody. Just say, well, you had a little data entry issue. I do it all the time. Let me show you how to fix it, and you can tell the person. That way, the person's not, you're not being defensive. You're not putting them on in a threatening mood. One of the solutions I had was on a fire truck. We would pull up the building floor plan on the onboard computers, and it was a FileMaker solution, and be able to print to an onboard thermal printer when we're going to a call. Well, IT decided to remove the print cable. He says, well, you don't print every time, just use it when you need to print. Well, I was going to go over and read them the Riot Act, but I listened to what their problem was, and I told them, this is how we're using it. We're in a truck bouncing down the road, the air horns and sirens are going off, you're looking out one side to make sure cars see you, you're navigating programs, you're switching radio channels, and you're giving directions to your crew. And you want them to unbuckle and restring a printer cable. That's not feasible. It's not going to work right. So you understood. Visit your users and find out how they use the program. Ask them, what do you hate? What do you like about it? And if there's something I could do to make your job easier, what would it be? And when you say that, you may have a deer in headlight look on some of these people, because a lot of these people have negative perceptions of IT. It's from somebody had a bad experience, and that rumor gets, talked about. People like to talk about bad things. It's not necessarily a fact, a truthful fact, but find out what can help them, because your users may use it different ways. They're going to get to know you, and you're going to get to know them, especially their learning style. So if you have to do a tutorial or something like that down the road. We had a person, when you had a problem at the station, he'd come out and sit down, and he'd talk with us for a few minutes, just about current events. And then he'd move the group to the computer where the problem was. And he'd tell the person that reported it, show me what you were doing when you had the problem. And he would look, obviously, for what he's doing wrong, but he'd also look to try to catch him doing something right. Because when he would start his correction out, He would start it on a positive moment, on a positive comment. You know, catch your people doing something right. Everybody loved this guy. Everybody loved him. And before he would leave, if there was other people, he'd say, let me show you a couple other tricks, maybe problems that other people in the solution are having problems with. Now, you're involved in IT, so you know this. Common sense isn't that common. But if you spend a couple extra minutes with the people, maybe make something understandable to them, that's going to pay off in the long run. That will pay off drastically in the long run. However, my favorite comedian, sometimes you just can't fix stupid, but you still got to try. You got to make it a project, help the person out a little bit. That time investment that you spend will be paid off with dividends down the road. Now, our IT department didn't like myself, FileMaker, or the fire department, and I found out why. One of our higher ranking people complained to the IT director's boss some very negative comments. So what comes around was coming around, or what went around is now coming around. Watch what you say to people. You ever notice this? People complain about the way things are, then you go to change it and they complain about that. How do you handle that? You don't have the training or the resources to deal with these people. Just be aware it's not you and do the best you can. Now that's a book by Ken Blanchard, Catch People Doing Something Right. He has another book called The 1 Minute Manager. Those are two of the best books I ever read. I had to take a graduate level course in adult teaching methodologies that dealt with behaviors, personalities, everything else. And I always forgot the official titles of the syndromes and all the behaviors. But this I use, and I've always used it. It works for me. It may not work for everybody, but I enjoy doing that. Now, if any of you are in a supervisory position, did the person come into work with the intent of screwing up? Ask yourself that question. When you have to discipline or correct somebody, chances are they want to come into work and they want to do a good job. They want to be rewarded for that. They want to be told they're doing a good job. So very rarely are you going to get somebody with the intent of screwing up. And you have to handle that, you know, the extenuating circumstances. If you have somebody with the intent of wanting to screw up, you got some major problems. And that has to be dealt with elsewhere. Let's say you have a gentleman in your organization, older like me, never grew up with computers, always makes mistakes, people make fun of him. So you're responding to a tech support call. You go to his office and you start reading him the Riot Act, telling him maybe he should look for another career or stuff like this. I've heard stories about this where people just demean him, the way they treat him. Well, until you know the full picture, you need to find out what happened. Why did this problem happen is what you need to look at. Because it could be your excellent FileMaker skills that aren't so excellent that were causing the problem. Then how would you feel? You read them the Riot Act, okay? And that's going to get to his boss and your boss. When you choose somebody out like that, that's how the rumors really travel. In the fire department, years ago, we were dispatched to a call for a couple of broken fingers. My partner says, why are we even going to this? We're for shootings, stabbings, heart attacks. This guy's got a possible broken finger. What are we doing? I says, well, people don't call 911 when they're having a good day. Let's find out what's going on. So we get there, and there's a 30-year-old gentleman holding his fingers, hysterical. And we're going like, what's going on? Something else is happening here. So he was homeless, just got a job, and the place he's going to work for owns this apartment in this building and was going to put him up. We're saying like, wow, that's pretty good. Then we see a box, and in the box, he's got 4 Purple Hearts, Bronze Star, Silver Star. This guy's a war hero with PTSD. So we're still wondering, well, things are going good. Why is he acting this way? Then we spotted a guitar. He was going to play the guitar. Now he can't do it with broken left fingers. So that went from a simple fracture to this guy would probably kill himself. I've seen this happen. You know, he had all the things, all the ducks in order for him to kill himself, all the behaviors. So if you don't investigate and find out what the full picture is, you're going to make some mistakes, and you're going to have to live with them. Anyways, long story short with this guy, the place he was going to work for, his boss offered him another job until his fingers healed. Plus, he got some counseling. He now manages restaurants for him. Now, every month I had to go to a meeting with our IT department, and this one gentleman will always ask me, how's that junky FileMaker program doing? Well, I'd been doing a pretty good job mending the fences, trying to get along. Finally, I just said, you know, I had to call tech support the other day. He goes, really? What's it doing? What's it not doing? I go, well, it's not crashing like everything you have does. So that sort of knocked a few fence posts back. And I left the meeting and I heard from somebody else. They said, why is it a firefighter picks up a database and designs a solution for over 200 users, had 0 crashes since it's been on, and yet we pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for software that crashes weekly? So the other thing with how you say things, your volume, your tone, the intensity, these all change the message. So when you're dealing with somebody, be concerned with this, okay? Now, how many of you have been told at home by your significant other, you're reading something, they'll go, well, what's wrong with you? Just your body English. Has anybody been told that? I see, yeah. I'm real bad that way. Well, we have a pet that gets cake and ice cream for dessert every night. Then she gets her teeth brushed. She doesn't like it. Now with that same Yorkie, if I were to say, you want your favorite grilled chicken? You see the facial will change. So you're going to have a change of expressions. We're the same way. So if you have this unique trait, you may want to work on that a little bit. Now, every year I used to go, or when I used to go snow skiing, I'd stop by and visit my aunt and uncle in DC. My aunt worked for the White House, and she had tons of memorabilia from the presidents. So one day I asked her, I said, who's your favorite and why? She goes, John and Jackie, Ron, Nancy, and their dog Lucky, George, and Barb. Now, if any of you heard the eulogies for President Bush, what did everybody say? He was personable. He got along with everybody. It's how he got along with people. He respected other people. So did everybody up there. As an in-house developer, if you can possess these traits, you're going to get along. A good friend of mine teaches a legal course, and the best way for me to tell you that is good paramedics get sued, bad paramedics get sued, nice paramedics do not get sued. So the analogy I'm trying to make is if you're nice and doing your job, it's going to be terrific. Now, as an in-house developer, you're part of the organization, but you're not part of the organization. You're there in a supportive role. When I worked in EMS, as the EMS chief, I had 200 paramedics that, yes, I was the boss of the complete system, but I viewed it, I was there to support them and their function. And as in-house developers, if you view it that the people are there to support you, you're going to fail miserably. And you're not going to get along good with people. You're there to support them. Now, a lot of organizations, you're not part of that core group. You're on an elevated level because you have the knowledge that these people do not have, and they look at you that way. So, now, last year in Dallas at DevCon, I was having lunch, and 2 developers were talking. And one guy was talking, he just destroyed his credibility. He didn't know what he was talking about. He was talking about the difference between ethics and morals and IT stuff. Well, he didn't know the difference. Ethics and morals run sort of side by side. But recently I read an article where a person passed away and in their will was to have their pet euthanized and buried with them. I'm a pet lover. I was appalled at that. I said, no way is that going to happen. The law allows it. Veterinary ethics allows it. So your ethics is a professional set of values for that organization, where your morals are just your own personal morals. They may be different, but for the most part, they're going to be pretty close together. Now, in personalities, they tell us they never change. Personality traits do not change, but behavior traits change. However, they also say that you have a personality for work and one for home, and I think that's probably true, because I often wondered with some of the people I worked with at the fire department how their spouse could tolerate their behavior. And I'm talking about both male and female, so there has to be something to that. Now, a lot of places will screen you for pre-employment personality tests. How many people you think answer that test honestly? Not too many. They're going to pick the question that they think they want to be asked. Now, with anything, see, I had to put that there to be legal. This is a database conference, so I had to put some formula there. Your experiences and the duration of those experiences mean a lot. Okay? That can change your behaviors. Now, why am I telling you this? As an in-house developer, you need to know everybody's personalities. You don't have the training or the time to do that. But what you do have, you need to find out what your personality is like, how you tick, and then you can better adapt to situations you get into. Now, in the file, the downloads, there's a link that you can select a personality test. You don't have to put your name in, and do it yourself. It takes you about 15 minutes. And then there's another link that explains that. Now, I asked a good friend of mine what that means, and I said I was speaking at a FileMaker convention. And he says, yeah, I've heard that. I was out in Phoenix when there was a conference. And he goes, those people like to have fun. So he said, just put this there. They'll understand that. Actually, what my personality test means is I'm a caregiver, which I was happy with it, and I answered it truthfully. How many of you know what an organizational chart is? Would you agree it's a visual representation of an organization, the departments, the divisions, the people, and so forth? Well, within a organization chart, you typically have a chain of command. That's basically the top to the down, the flow of information and directives. Span of control. Each supervisor is typically going to handle 3 to 7 direct reportees. Now, why am I telling you this? You know, fire departments use this extensively, but big businesses, they're adopting these policies. Unity of command. In that chain of command chart, or the organizational chart, you'll have where a person should only receive orders from one person. Okay? From one master. You may only respond to one master. That's a biblical saying. Now, the example we're going to see in just a minute has police department, fire department, sanitation, public works, recreation, IT, and the IT department has techs embedded in each of these other departments. Who do you report to in your organization? The numbers at the bottom are the amount of people assigned to these divisions. I didn't have enough room to put it all on one chart, and I didn't want to confuse you that much. But this is a simple fire department chain of command chart. Now, you don't see IT there, do you? Remember I said they're part of an organization, but they're not part of the core group? Now, chain of command example, the fire chief receives an order or a directive to put the flags at half-mast. Well, in this department, there's 11 flagpoles, and my chief would know that, and he'd probably know the diameter and the length of each one too. So he has an option. He can call a firefighter at each one of those 11 physical locations and give the order. That's not too effective. It's within his chain of command because it's going all the way to the bottom of that chain of command. He's going there, he's going right down to here. But somebody walks by and sees a flag at half mast, thinks the knot slipped, so he's going to raise it up. The right way for him to do that is to notify his deputy chief, who's going to notify the communications chief, and puts out a directive, and it goes to the assistant chiefs, and then down to the divisions. And everyone in that organization has received that flow of information. Now, I want to schedule a class, and I'm in the blue, I'm the EMS guy, and I want to schedule a class. So I know somebody in that green box, training and safety, is going to be the one that does it. So I call him up, say, I need to do this, and he says, well, I was just assigned to do something else, I can't help you. And I say, well, I outrank that person, I want you to do this. Then you can do what you were asked. Doing that is going to upset 4 people, me, him, his boss for counteracting his order, and my boss for being a jerk for doing it. That's not the way to do it. In this example, it's just confusion, and it looks disorganized. But if this was on a fire ground, a police activity, military action, construction site, industry, or manufacturing process, that could kill somebody when you counteract a person's order. Many of your businesses are adopting these models, and it's part of the incident command system. So be ready for that. Now, what I would do, I would call my boss, the operations guy. Who's going to call this guy, that department, who's going to notify the division chief in charge of training to assign somebody to get a hold of me and schedule a class. So the guy's going to pick up the phone, call me, and go, hey, chief, what you need? I'm going to tell him, send him the part. Everything's good. Everybody knows about that then. That's what you call the flow of information in the chain of command. So where's IT? We're going to put him right there for right now. There's 3 IT guys, or people. Now, we developed a solution in FileMaker for work orders in 2006. It's still working today. Oops. Let me go through this again. And we developed a liaison. Sorry about that. And we put it right about there. That's just for any information we can run them through there. It doesn't have to go there, but in your organization, who do you report to and how is that reflected? That's in your flow chart. Now, what are the signs of stress? Could it be your attitude, how you act at work? It's one of the signs. Could it be you're partying too much, you're calling in Friday and Mondays? Maybe you have a substance abuse issue. Maybe you're not completing your assignments. You have marital problems or you have financial problems. These are all signs of stress. And anybody in the IT industry is going to have stress, trying to meet deadlines and everything else. So what are the causes? At work, it could be ineffective leadership. It could be a hostile work environment, sexual harassment, bullying, the culture of the organization, and you can have the same thing at home. But the thing is you need to get help. Because if you can modify it or eliminate that one stressor, you're going to solve the problems. If you need help, have somebody at home you can talk to, if that's possible, somebody at work. You have your physician, religious leader, and most places have employee assistance programs. But you need to work on the stress. people would walk into my office without looking up. I would say, "It can't be done. Now get out of here. Leave me alone. I'm busy." Because I was getting pulled in every different direction. My own boss didn't know exactly what I was doing, and I was getting additional assignments. I had other division heads wanting conflicting things done with the software issues that I was responsible for. I had suggestions running rampant, and it wasn't until I put a list together of everything I did in both positions. And then I approached my bosses and said, "Look, I want to improve efficiency within the division, and I need you to look at this stuff. I need a second set of eyes." They looked at that and they had two words, "holy," and I'll leave the second one for your imagination. But I had everything written down, breaks and everything. Immediately, the extra assignments stopped. The people that were asking for stuff, that got rerouted. The suggestions, we did the best we could. Even though our own HR department had a policy, you make a suggestion, you had a higher annual evaluation score. We were waiting for them to put beer in the vending machines or something, with the way their program was. But everything, and they got somebody to help me out, that disruption plan. Within a couple days, my stress levels shot down. Now, I still had stress for whenever I'd go to a conference or a DevCon, I had a spy in IT. Whenever they would start to mess with the server, I'd call one of my buddy chiefs and he'd put a stop to it so they wouldn't crash it. But this worked for me. Now, in your organizations, you're always going to have somebody that does not know what a megabyte is, and you're going to have somebody that's smarter than you. Keep it simple. Don't try to impress people. When you try to impress people, you make a fool out of yourself. But just keep it simple. Oops and oh. We had a policy at the fire department where when you completed paramedic school, you rode with a couple seasoned veterans. So we go on a call, and I'm going to prove a couple points to you. And we find a little old lady complaining of a sick sinus syndrome, needing overdrive pacing. She's sitting in the low 80s. She has a PALP of 60. She has junctional bradycardia at 38. She has basilar rails. So do you understand what I just said? Probably made you a little uncomfortable. But if I would have told you, we arrived, we found a little old lady whose mentation was decreased, her heart rate was slow, her blood pressure was low, the oxygen levels were low, and she was all diaphoretic and had some problems. That once we raise her heart rate up, it will get rid of the fluid in her lungs, increase everything else, and she'll be fine. She may need a pacer. So you understood that. When you're talking to people, consider that. They may not know what you're talking about. So this paramedic that we had was about ready to start an IV on this lady, and this sweet little old lady goes, "Well, what do you got to do that for?" So he goes, slip over the tongue. He just goes, "Well, we need this in case your heart stops. We don't want to have another one die on us today." It's one of these things where you just want to do a face plant, and it's when you're stressed out, a lot of times you have something that just escapes. And I got some stories, if somebody wants to get me later, that we won't put on tape. But it happens. Now, you have to keep HIPAA data, personal identity, business plans, business processes. That's all confidential. But what do you do if you find a file on somebody's computer? You're working on their computer, and it could be criminally illegal. What do? You need to have that conversation. How do you handle that? Because if you do nothing and a forensic audit is done, they may be able to track you to being on that computer, and if the person whose computer that uses that computer wants an out, they can always say, maybe you put it there. It can cause problems. You need to find out what they want you to do if this occurs. Now, we've spent the better part of 45 minutes or so talking about perceptions of IT, what we can do to smooth that out and maybe change the behaviors. But what about the people we encounter, the employee behaviors? What moves this? You go into somebody's office, they're just standoffish. You ever think? You walk into a gentleman's office, he happens to be a Muslim, and you ask him about his wife or his daughter? That's an insult. You think he's going to do anything? No. Muslim faith is one of the most tolerant in the world. But when you see something that you don't expect, a behavior, think, why is it that? Why are they acting that way? Could somebody tell a joke and a person doesn't laugh? It's either a bad joke or maybe it's against their religion. You just don't know. Past experiences. About 95% of victims of domestic violence have issues while they're at work. Could it be that? Do you need a chaperone when you walk into somebody's office, close the door to work on their computer, and they're in there? Let's say you have a male in-house developer walks into Brenda's office to work on her computer. She's in there and closes the door. Meanwhile, John and Nancy are across the hall and they see that. You just gave them the best roomer around. They see that happening, you close the door, they're going to start thinking something's going on. They're having an affair or something like that. But more importantly, you don't want to put yourself in that position. Don't put yourself in that position. If you're a female and walk into a gentleman's office, close the door to work on the computer and he's there. I wouldn't do that with what's happening across the nation nowadays. You hear it in the news every night. Anything in that circle, office politics, rumors, gossiping, as an in-house developer, you need to stay clear of that like the plague. You really do, because you're in a different position. Some of the big things now is hostile work environment, bullying, sexual harassment. You see it in the news every day. Don't get caught in the middle of that. Two big things. It's a person's perception, and is that attention wanted or unwanted? Many of these will get investigations launched. This is a Civil Rights Act that handles businesses with 15 or greater people. Most of your state has an equal opportunity office where you can get more information, and you have company policies out there. Now, when you do your evaluations, not only for this presentation, but any presentation while you're up here, really say what you like, what you don't like, and don't be afraid to make suggestions. That's why I'm back this year. Last year I did a presentation, and I had excellent reviews, and they made suggestions, so we did this. So make sure not only on this, but everything out there, you do it. And I have an email. I will respond to emails. Make sure you download that stuff that's on the site. And only if you have report issues to me about the presentation file or the resource tip file, if I have to fix something or redo something, I'll send it back out and replace it. Now, does anybody have any stories, questions, or anything? We've got a few minutes to go. Everybody, I think, is wanting to go out to the pub trivia thing they're having. Any comments or anything?
My old firm had a, oh, sorry, the mic.
Thank you.
Just, we actually had a person who had stuff they shouldn't have on their work computer.
and the cops came and took his PC and every PC in the office. So we should have been aware of that, was their response to us, that storing things, and you know, we tolerate and say, okay, you know, porn's fine, but he had child porn on his computer. So the fact we were tolerating it was held against the firm at the time. It's like, okay, it shouldn't be in the workplace, period.
Yeah, you
So
know, even if it's a porno website,
Right.
you have
So
stuff that's
how
illegal.
disruptive do you think it was to our business that the police came in the middle of the day and took him and every computer in the office out?
Yes.
For me, one of the greatest challenges is what you were talking about. When you have so many different stakeholders within the business that you're working for, all asking you to do different things, and they don't always align with the big picture. And oftentimes, fixing one thing for somebody breaks something else because people are so set and focused on what their specific need is. And that's, I think, for me, one of the biggest challenges working in-house is that everybody comes to me directly. I don't have one person that all the requests go through.
Yeah, one of the things that we learned early on in the fire service, well, the incident command system, that was developed for fighting wildfires in California in the 70s. A lot of major businesses, Fortune 500 companies, are adopting those policies for that very reason. In other words, what you're experiencing, you're having everybody and their uncle calling you for advice, and nobody's coordinating it. So it's almost like who's on first, what's on second, that type of a scenario where, you know, and hopefully, you know, your boss or whoever can start to figure out who do you report to. You know, that's why I recommended a suggestion program, or you have a work order program. Do it in FileMaker for when they have a problem. Fill out a work order, put it on the server. Then that way you can find out what you're doing. Okay. Well, you got to do it. Do it. Write a program, put it on there, and say, I want to track where the problems are. One of the things I did is I logged stuff, and that told me where my deficiencies was. Okay.
I don't know if this works, but we found that what users tell you they want, especially what a manager tells you they want, what they actually use, it can be worlds apart, and we didn't figure that out until we started putting triggers on layouts. So we made a very lightweight trigger and put it on every layout in the solution so we could track who was hitting which layouts when. We spent probably 100 hours developing a dashboard, which we found out no one used. And I do mean no one. So we spent all that time because the boss wanted it, he wanted his people to use it, but there was nothing to force them to use it, so no one did. So he would ask us, well, why aren't we seeing the efficiency from the use of the dashboard like it was our fault? And we could come back to him and show, well, because you haven't basically given them a reason to use it. We spent over 100 hours developing this, but no one's using it. And oh, by the way, we can see when they hit it, look at it for 5 seconds, and then leave again. But if we hadn't taken the effort, because I mean, even if it's 10 people, you can't stand behind them all day. So by putting a trigger on the layout, I think was the smartest thing we got from talking to Bill at Akiza here, who spoke here. He says, don't take what your user tells you at face value. You want to actually track it. See, okay, if they say I'm clicking on these buttons and they're causing issues and I do that 50 times a day, guess what? Put a trigger on those buttons. Find out who's using it, what is it, the happy path, you know? Everyone else does it this way and somebody else does it that way. That was really, I think, powerful for us because how else, even if you only have 10 people using that page, how do I track, you know, cost and benefit? We spent all that time and no one was using it. But when we came back and showed them no one was using it, it wasn't us that was in trouble, it was the person who had asked for it in the first place. So,
Yeah, if you're getting orders or requests from different people, You need to get some sort of work order or a suggestion system going on. That way you can control it. Because one of the things I faced is people were making suggestions on the EMS side, which takes an equal amount of research as an IT side. I had one person say, well, we need to carry this drug because it can help people. Yeah, it can help people, this one particular drug, but I researched 5 years worth of rescue calls, one occurrence. The drug cost $3,000, so 2 in each unit, that's 20 units. Then it has a short shelf life, and then it has to be refrigerated on the rescue trucks. Then you have to, it's not recommended for field use. So these were the types of stuff that I had to research, even though I knew right off the bat it's not a good match. But my boss wanted to find out, well, why isn't it that way? So I'd have to research that. After getting a suggestion program going, that dropped. And that's just an example. But if you don't have a way to track that, you don't have the information to talk to them. And who do you report to?
So the protocol in our company, we've grown from about 8 or 12 people to over 80 in a matter of about 5 years. And so the nature of the legacy group was, you need something done, ask Deb. But as we've grown, that's become harder and harder to manage because even though I have a manager, and I don't use that tool, but I do keep track of what I do, and my manager says, oh, wow, I didn't know you do so much. But I don't have the support to have stuff filter through. So I'm gonna look, and I had instituted a request form a long time ago, and I had a hard time getting people to use it. But I'm gonna try again and see how that works.
Well, when you do something, do it where it's an advantage to them a little bit. Like maybe you put in a suggestion, the best suggestion of the month receives an attaboy or something like that.
I like that.
Yes, sir. Hang on.
Okay, my name is Josh. I had the issue of everyone coming towards me for all these requests for FileMaker. Oh, we want this, need that. After a while, I just became bombarding. So the policy we put in is every employee who has a suggestion or idea has to send it to their manager. Their manager then will evaluate it and most likely will get rejected because most times it's some dumb stuff like a font suggestion or a color or the button size, and that my mailbox decreased because they had to go to their manager, and then from there, if it was something their manager seen or deemed important, then we'll go to my manager, and then it comes down to me. So that helped eliminate the bombardment of your coworkers coming with all these crazy, funny suggestions.
Put guidelines on their suggestions.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Teach them how to make a suggestion. Put guidelines on it.
Oh, that's always a fun part. I say, oh, emails must be descriptive, but
You can try.
yes,
I'm not going to say
it
it's going to work.
doesn't register on some of them.
Anybody else have anything, or? Well, then I guess we're done. Hope everybody enjoyed it, and yeah, you need to work on getting some sort of a work order system, suggestion system going on.